Hi everyone, this is Frank with Teaching University, and in this lecture today, we're going to be discussing how to use the powers of our subconscious mind, and we're going to be focusing on this diagram that I've borrowed from Bob Proctor, who, for those of you who don't know who he is, he was in The Secret. He was also one of the best well-known personal growth coaches in the industry. Unfortunately, he passed away as of late, but he used this diagram very often in a lot of his videos in discussing really how we can use our subconscious mind, or more specifically, how just we can use our minds much more efficiently to accomplish our goals and live happier, more well fulfilled, and satisfying lives. And I think it's a very simple, effective diagram that we can kind of dive into so we can understand our minds a little bit better and how to use our minds more efficiently to achieve what we want. And I want to start the lecture with referencing Michael Crichton, who obviously, for those of you who don't know who he is, he wrote Jurassic Park, The Andromeda Strain Congo, and really was just considered one of the greatest science fiction writers of the 20th century. And he passed away in 2004. But in a speech he made at the Academy of Achievement in the late 80s, an audience member asked him how it was he was able to write all these books and accomplish so much. He was also a well-known director as well, an author. I mean, he just was an amazing intellect and had such a vivid imagination. And his response was that he equated the conscious mind, which is the top part of the circle here, to a mouse, and the subconscious, the bottom part of that circle, as the elephant. And what he said was that in order for us to be able to achieve whatever it is we want to achieve, we have to use the elephant. We have to use that subconscious mind in order for us to achieve what we want to achieve and what we set out to do. And I think that was a very revealing statement on his part and how he was able to accomplish so much. And I think how perhaps we can take that and take this diagram and take what Bob Proctor and all these people have said and have discussed on how to use the subconscious mind and how we can use that information in our own lives so that we can accomplish more without using as much energy and with less stress and internal resistance. So really, to kind of start here, we're going to start with the conscious part of the mind. The conscious mind is the analytical mind. It's the thinking mind. And basically here we use our five senses to interact with our external environment. And through our senses, through where we hear, see, smell, taste, and touch, we develop thoughts and images in our mental studio. And we also develop ideas that we can accept and reject. So this is where our ideas are originated. And this is also where our intellectual factors are: our imagination, intuition, reasoning, will, memory, and perception, or short-term memory for that matter. And this is where information is impressed through repetition and emotion, and it is passed on to the subconscious mind. So what does that mean? So when you think about many of our habits, 95% of our habits are totally unconscious, but they start with an idea in the conscious mind that through repetition over time, okay, we keep thinking the same thoughts with emotional intensity. Eventually, that becomes part of our personality and becomes part of our personal reality, as Joe Dispenza says. So what that means is, for example, let's say that we have a habit of obviously checking into our cell phones, which many of us do, and we check into a specific website, a news site that maybe has headlines that just get us rattled up in the morning. And we do this enough times, eventually that becomes a hardwired habit because we do it through repetition. And the thought associated with checking into our cell phone and seeing that headline of some negative event unleashes an emotional reaction where eventually we get the same reaction every time we do this. It's through repetition. And through something called Hebb's law, whatever fires together, wires together, it becomes ingrained in our personality where it becomes second nature and it becomes subconscious. And another example, I guess to try to clear that up a little bit more, to use a simpler example, let's say when we learn how to drive. When we learn how to drive initially, we're using the analytical brain, the conscious mind, because we're learning how to drive, we're learning all the rules, and really regulations involved with learning how to drive and how to operate a vehicle. But eventually over time, it becomes second nature. We don't think about it because we do it so many times. And that is essentially how habits are formed. That's how ultimately becomes part of our personality. And the subconscious mind then is the emotional mind. It works in feelings. It must accept all information impressed upon it through repetition or emotion. So what that means is that, let's say, for example, you went on an airplane and you experienced a really bad turbulence, or there was an emergency and there had to be an emergency landing, and it was a pretty emotional event. You were very nervous and scared. So because of the emotional intensity of that, just by thinking about that event, even though that event has already happened, it's already in the past, just by thinking about what happened, the emotional intensity is still there. Because your subconscious mind thinks that you are in that environment or in that plane where you're having that emergency landing. Okay? So the subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between what's real or not. You can think of an imaginary event, and with enough emotional intensity, your subconscious can think it is real. So that's why the subconscious is so powerful, and how we use it can determine whether we are successful or not when it comes to trying to pursue a particular goal. And also with the subconscious, it controls the vibration of the body. And this is where I think can be a little bit confusing and vague. And I think this is where Bob Proctor especially talks about the law of attraction, how we vibrate and we attract what it is that we want based on our vibration. If we're in a positive vibration, we're thinking positive thoughts, then we can bring forth more of the good stuff that can occur in our lives. But also, I think a better way to understand that when it comes to vibration, sometimes, I don't know, you've probably encountered people, maybe you're at a party or a networking event, and you meet someone and they have this energy about them. And perhaps this has happened when you've met people just, in everyday life. You meet someone and they have this it factor. They have this energy that just, it rubs you the right way. You feel good around this person. But then, of course, you've met people that have this negative vibe. You just don't want to be around them. They're just like a Debbie Downer. And you're just, you don't enjoy being around them. And I think that's the vibration that Proctor is talking about, is that some people just emit an energy. Now, we don't produce energy. We are energy. And what we focus our energy on can determine our success or failure, or how we really come across other people. So if we are focused more on more positive images and thoughts and ideas, then I think we're going to emit a more positive vibration. But more specifically, where we focus our energy can also determine the actions that we take physically. So when you look at the actions here in our body, it's the doing part of our personality. And the vibration of the body is decided by thoughts held in the subconscious. And it controls the action and behavior part of the personality. So as I said before, 95% of our behaviors are totally unconscious. So we do things every single day without us even realizing it. And sometimes, a way to simplify that is sometimes, for example, you ask a child, they did something wrong, you ask them, why did they do that? And their answer is, well, I don't know, because that just becomes part of their personality. So we have these unconscious habits. Some of them are good and some of them are not good. But in any case, they're part of our personality, and they become ingrained and hardwired in our minds, in our brains. So then, without understanding, how can we use the conscious and subconscious mind to then achieve our goals? Well, let's say, for example, what throws off a lot of people is that, say they have an idea to start a business, or maybe they have a specific number in terms of how much money they want to make. They want to make $100,000, and they have this idea in their mind. Now, the problem is that a lot of people face is that there's nothing necessarily in their external environment to validate that what they want is possible, or that those $100,000 is a realistic reality that they can achieve, or goal that they can achieve. So this is where we use our senses. We use our senses to observe our external environment. And more often than not, we say to ourselves, oh, well, I want these $100,000, but I'm in a job where I make $30,000 a year. I don't know anybody. I don't have a good network. I'm not smart enough, so on and so forth. And all of us have probably gone through these negative thoughts from time to time. But we use our external environment and our senses to deny us this idea, or to basically convince us that what we want, or this $100,000, is not possible. So then the step that we want to start taking then is we don't want to rely on our external circumstances. Okay? We want to incubate this idea within our minds and ignore what is going on in our circumstances for the time being. That's why meditation is so important, because meditation helps block out or at least for a period of time, what is going on around us, and we focus by going within. So we want to think about, let's say, the $100,000 and start asking ourselves more empowering questions. What would it feel like if I had these $100,000 right now? Or start contemplating that. And over time, you do this enough times, that emotion will bubble up as far as what it would feel like to have these $100,000. And obviously, for the answer to that is that it would feel great. It'll feel empowering to have these $100,000. We can start to come up with ideas of what we can do with this money in terms of paying off debt, starting a business, giving it through philanthropy or helping others, or donating to a nonprofit, or we can invest the money. There's a number of different ideas here that we can entertain, but this is where we want to start really going within and entertaining ideas around this $100,000, and more specifically, what it would feel like if we achieved this money. And also, what's the most important thing here is that by doing this, we for a period of time shut off the analytical brain. The problem is for many of us is that we tend to overthink our ideas and we second guess our abilities. When we become overly analytical, then it prevents us from really being able to take action on our ideas. And more specifically, when we become analytical, it prevents us from impressing into the subconscious mind positive emotions and ideas that can change our habits and behaviors. So this is where we have to become less analytical. Now, this may sound a little bit paradoxical then, but what we want to start doing is we want to start thinking about how we're thinking, meaning that we want to start observing our results and our behaviors. If we start to see that something is not working, or we're not getting those kind of results in our lives that we want and are desirable, we have to start thinking about that and observing that and start to pivot and be more deliberate in terms of the kind of change that we want to achieve. And by doing that over time, by being, and this is something called metacognition, by becoming much more aware of our thoughts and behaviors, we can start to make changes that can also impact the subconscious as well. But I think the big thing here is that we want to become less analytical. We want to start doing more. And we don't want to let our external circumstances define us and really discourage us from the ideas that we have. Just because you can't see something, just because you can't see it with your senses, doesn't mean that it's not possible. And that's why the subconscious is so important. That's why we want to use these higher mental faculties that are within us. And that means also listening to our intuition and our gut. Sometimes it's better to put away our cell phone. This is why I'm a big advocate of meditation. When we meditate, we want to start listening to ourselves. We have this inner genius that's inside of us that if we just start listening and paying attention, it will come up with the answers to our most pressing problems. We got to start listening and also focusing on what we really want. What is it that we really want? And once we figure that out, then we can begin to focus on what it is that we want to achieve. And as Earl Nightingale says, you become what you think about all day long. And if you focus on the bad stuff and the negativity and all the bad things that are going on out there, then more than likely that's going to reflect in your circumstances. But if you focus on what you want and not get deterred by what's happening in your external environment, and with such emotional intensity, you back up your dreams and your ideas that you want for yourself and to build a better future, and holding that vision in your mind, then that's when the good stuff happens. And that's when you can really bring about change. And that's how we can really utilize the subconscious mind to really achieve whatever it is that we want to achieve. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can watch all my lectures on personal growth, wealth building, creativity, and entrepreneurship. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.